right, good afternoon all. I see the folks on YouTube. I've been on bright and early since 1:30 and before. So let me see who we have here. Ian Bristol, good afternoon. Point Kumana. Sharon, good afternoon to you too. Yes, I remember Eric told me I needed to contact Point Kumana. Sharon. Right. Hi Val, Rude Trude, good afternoon. Out there, Alan, Alberta, Sampath, Caroline Crossley, good afternoon. Yes. Lively conversation taking place there now. And YouTube, over on Facebook, we have Christopher Surratt, good afternoon, sir. Rosemary Headley, Diane Charles, Sharon Williams, Phyllis Antoine, good afternoon, Lester de Matas. Good afternoon to His Excellency Nigel O'Connor, and First Lady Marcia Kagan. Andrea Innes, good afternoon. Dwayne Peters, Daryl Nanton, greetings, sir. Veronica Jack, good afternoon. Norris Jokes. Hi, Carol. How the rain treating you all on your side? Neil Francois, Angela Amau, afternoon. Everybody jumping on. Ruth Fronton. I did not get the lady last night, whose daughter I met at dining with the Saints, and she would have called her mom while I was there for me to say hi, but she didn't give me a name, so let me say good morning to you if you're on. Hi, Alison Boyce, Alison Samuel, Harold Lee. Afternoon to all of you guys. Yeah, so I'm starting late today, guys, because I think as I had indicated to you all, yesterday was dining with the Saints, which is in Mary's College Past Students Union. It's one of the 3 annual fundraising events that we have to raise funds to assist the school. So it's we have chefs from a variety of different places, well, different alumni associations. So we have chefs from Fatima, QRC, a number of other schools and so on who volunteer to provide dishes, and they come and they serve and so on. And when they have theirs, we reciprocate by we would provide dishes to assist, and in some cases where possible, some of our membership would go and act as chefs, well, serve on the night. So that was yesterday. So being on the board, I had to certain duties to perform there, and then this morning we had to go back and assist in cleaning up the school to get it ready for classes tomorrow, because I think exams are now on, CXA exams or whatever they call it, KEEP. Yeah, so we had to go back this morning, the organizing committee, to bring back the school to a level of readiness, hence the late start today. And then while I was heading down this morning, somebody drew to my attention an interview that Gary Griffith did yesterday on I-95.5 and suggested that I take a listen. And I only got to listen late, and apparently it's a very lengthy interview from what I've listened to so far. Wow, I mean, Gary Griffith deserves the award for the biggest ego there is. I mean, that interview degenerated very quickly. And in some cases, he was running rings around John and John. I think, the level of disrespect that was meted out not only to the hosts, but in terms of the Prime Minister and others, is unbecoming to my mind of somebody who wants to be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and who is of the genuine belief that he would be successful in that. Now, I make the point that it is not, while John Benoit kept saying, I didn't even want to get into that yet, but all right, before I go there, there was something else I wanted to touch on quickly before I get into that, because I wanted to touch on something else. But I mean, kudos to all of you who were able to listen to that interview in its entirety, because I was getting real vexed listening to that, and to some extent, I think John and John were a bit ill prepared for that interview, because there were certain questions that they asked Gary Griffith in which it was very easy to debunk his answers. And again, that's why when you're going to interview somebody like Gary Griffith, it's important that you do your work, you do your research, and have your information at hand, know the questions you're going to ask, and make sure you have your supplementary evidence. So whatever answer he gives, you can back it up. And that is what, to my mind, was lacking in that interview yesterday. So that he was able to see things that could easily be disproved. But because the two gentlemen did not have the facts, at least the documentary evidence at hand to contradict what he said, they found themselves in a situation where they allowed him to get away with quite a bit of misinformation. And much to the delight, of course, of the UNC and other supporters who were listening to that. I have no issue. I hold no brief for Gary Griffith. In fact, I would have had recent interactions with him on another venture that the Past Students Union undertook, where we would have had a career week for the students, inviting, they considered a distinguished alumni to come and talk to the students about their jobs, their respective jobs, what would have informed their decision to go the path that they did, career-wise. And I was asked to get in contact with Mr. Griffith to see if he would come and be a part of the exercise, and I did. So that was my first interaction with him, right? So, well, he was most willing to participate. But again, anyway, I say no more on that. Right? That wasn't my choice. But anyway, before I get into that, let me see where I stopped off, because I intend to go back and listen to the rest of this interview and comment on the rest of what I hear. Let me see the time here. It's all right. So 4:23. That's where I'm stopping. Right. Okay. So I'm going to see. Yeah. So there was one thing I wanted to touch on before I get into that. What an interview! Yes, sir. There is it. That is not true. Why do that? So, right. So I know, as I'm looking at the replay of yesterday's interview, and I'm looking in the comments, and I'm seeing a lot of people whose names I see on here. I listened to some of the callers who called in to give Mr. Griffith piece of their mind. And I even found his interactions with some of the callers was really out of place, telling people if they have on their bosses and all kind of thing. And that is uncalled for, but yet still they say Dr. Rowley's arrogant and Rowley's a raging bull and Rowley don't know how to talk to people. The way that Mr. Griffith behaved in that interview yesterday, Dr. Rowley would never have behaved like that. Dr. Rowley has his ways, he has his mannerisms, he is who he is, but at least he's able to temper his ego. Ego is not an issue for him. And he knows decorum. How could you be you're talking to some radio talk show host and you telling the people do your facts and get your facts and do your research, and if you're done so all kind of boy. Right. So there's just one thing I want to touch on before I get there, right? So last week Monday, I think it was, when at the Monday night forum, Mrs. Pasal Bisessa was talking about, I think it was last week or week before. She was talking about Guyana and saying, boy, once upon a time we used to really laugh at Guyana, and now Chile's running to Guyana by the group. Dime a dozen, we run into Guyana to establish businesses and so on, and how things so great and wonderful in Guyana and all of that. I wanted to read something I saw on a Facebook page called Show the World Guyana. I think, in fact, right now tomorrow is their local government election. So I saw where they've been campaigning, a lot of campaigning has been taking place. And Show the World Guyana puts out a post that reads, remove taxes on mobile phones. Not a bad idea, but I think remove taxes on the cost of living should be better so the Guyanese people can afford to feed themselves and family. This is from a person living in Guyana, right? And I went through some of the comments that I found interesting. One person, Pamela Rampasad, says, Mr. President, please listen to the people. Remove tax from food items like baby stuff, rice, flour, oil. The people are crying out, you are doing a fabulous job as president, but doing this will leave you in that seat until never weary morning act, Mr. President. Another one says, Yes, no, I guess we're going to have to start eating phones. Everything is politics now. Another person says, um, yes, no, the cost of living is high. Phones are luxuries in Ghana. A country, another one says, a country with less than 1 million people, a country with oil, what other natural resources? I would love to hear that taxes are removed from food. I would love to send more money to Guyana, and this is apparently some a Guyanese living abroad says it costs 50 to 55 US to send a barrel, and the cost of shipping is between 100 to 110 US. Another one says, I will never return to Guyana due to the high cost of living. Another person says, food is more important than phone. That phone is a waste of time for blind. Something, okay, biggest, all right. Another person says it's the stores and supermarket owners making their own taxes on those items. They don't adhere to government policy. And that's why drugs and dangerous items are being smuggled by these businesses. And so the entire email, the entire comment thread basically is people, Guyanese persons living in Ghana, telling you about the cost of living in Ghana, how it's so high. Never mind the fact that Ghana has more oil and gas than Trinidad and Tobago ever had, and probably ever will have. But with all of this oil and well, more oil notes, more so now than gas. They're not really into the gas as yet, but more so oil. With all of these discoveries they've made and all of this money, you're seeing infrastructural development taking place in Guyana, but the people are not seeing it in terms of the standard of living. There's a guy by the name of Glenn, I can't remember his name, Jenny sent it to me. I'll try and pull it up. Who, he's a commentator and he comments on what is happening in Guyana with respect to the government. And he's recently been doing some of his lives where he's praising Dr. Rowley for the way that he is managing our energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago as compared to what is taking place in Guyana. And he's praised Dr. Rowley, for his ability to take on the big companies, as opposed to what he says is taking place in Guyana, where the political directorate, everybody just, allowing Exxon and them to take advantage of the Guyanese people to rape Guyana of its natural resources at peppercorn rates, similar to what the UNC did between 2010 to 2015, where they offered sweetheart deals and concessions to the energy companies, so much so that they would be allowed to write off any expenditure they incur with respect to finding oil and gas for up to 2024. So they wouldn't have had to pay any taxes until 2024. And this is stuff that took place between 2010 to 2015. We're still in 2023. So had it not been for Dr. Rowley's tenacity and Dr. Rowley's forthrightness when it comes to fighting for Trinidad and Tobago and its citizens with respect to these companies and laying down the law to let them know, Kamla Prasad Sessa and the UNC gave you all this. But this is not in the best interest of my country. I am not prepared to have you all exploit my country's natural resources, sell it, make a ton of money, and we don't benefit until 2024. And then on 2024, come along for to tell us, well, here what now, we're really making us no money on this thing, so we can't really pay much taxes. No, in the first place, when he just became prime minister, he, Stuart Young and others, traveled to the US, they went to the UK, they spoke to the heads of BP and Shell and all these companies, and Dr. Rowley put on his foot and laid down the law. And as a result of that, he was able to get this country, at least in the first instance, $3 billion. $3 billion in taxes and royalties. These companies had to concede and say, well, okay, yes, we understand what it is you're saying, right? Yes, your predecessor gave us these sweetheart concessions so that we could drill more and find more. And, we hear what you're saying. Yeah, we took advantage of the situation. And had the PNM not won the election in 2015 and 2020, those concessions would have continued. So for the last 8 years and some that this government has been in power, had the UNC been in power, the People's Partnership, all of those millions and billions of dollars in taxes and royalties would have been lost. All the things that money has been spent on in the last 8 years, we would not have had. Where would the revenue have come from? So if you all think and complaining now, think hard and the country and suffering and people can't even afford to buy food and the majority, there's the nonsense they're talking about. The majority of the country can't afford to put food on the table and buy the basic necessities. Really? Yesterday I went to Super Farm in Trin City. Yesterday afternoon. because I, having left CIC, doing stuff there, to come home to change and then to go back down. And I had to go to Superfarm to pick up some two-sided tape to do some stuff when I go back. And I noted the car park in the new mall, Eastgate Mall, owned by George Aboud and Sons. Couldn't find a park. The car park ram out. Ram out, you know. People driving around in circles trying to find park in this brand new mall. But we can't afford to put food on our table. We can't afford to buy the basic necessities. But this mall, this brand new mall that just completed, that is almost fully tenanted or probably fully tenanted by now, can't get space in the car park. So apparently everybody who was there just went to look and see what the new mall looked like. Nobody went to shop, right? But the UNC continued to talk that stupidness, but people suffering and they can't put food on the table and don't get anything. What series have we reached in license plates? Last I saw PEE 9,000 and something, which means that series is more or less gone. So we should be heading into what? PF just now? What series did we start the year on? So about 30,000 cars already sold for the first 6 months of this year, but we're suffering. We can't afford to put food on the table. We're eating grass. Yeah. That is the dotage talk you're going to be hearing for the next 2 months or so as we head into local government elections coming from these people. But I just thought I would touch a little bit on that issue with Guyana, which I found most interesting, that you have so many Trini business owners running to Guyana because they're seeing opportunities there. They're not investing in Trinidad. No, they're leaving their country to run to Guyana. A lot of the development that is taking place in Guyana, infrastructure development, is not the government, it's the private sector, and not just the Guyanese private sector. The Trinidad and Tobago private sector is developing Guyana's infrastructure. Whether they're putting up tall buildings or whatever it is, to make Guyana look more like Dubai. You see? UNC supporters love to talk about we should have been looking like Dubai, all the hundreds of millions and how much billions and two oil boom under the PNM. We should have been looking at like Dubai. And I make the point, Dubai looks like Dubai because of the private sector. And when the Trinidad and Tobago private sector is running to Guyana to develop Guyana, but not developing their own country, we see some of them doing it. Some of them developing Trinidad and Tobago, making investments. We're seeing things happening, even though the UNC continues to tell you the economy on the brink, and economy in tatters, and all of that foolish talk. Volvo say that sales of their high-end vehicles are up 85%. 85%. This is post-COVID. And the SUV range, where the cheapest SUV in the Volvo SUV is probably about $460,000 to $480,000. Sales are up 85%. That if you want to get one of these vehicles, you have to order it in advance and wait for it to come in because demand is so high, but we can't afford to put basic food items on the table. Yeah, because Rowley put back VAT on 7,000 food items. Ask them with 7,000 food items, they can't tell you. Ask them when last they look at the amount of money they spent on VAT on their grocery bill. But yet still you go price smart, and I see in people buying 65 and 75-inch televisions, swiping their card. Once upon a time, these things used to happen only under hire purchase. But back in the days, before courts, what they had was Huggins or something. So back in the days, everything was hire purchase in the days of Singer and these companies. Now, people going price smart, big screen TV, 65, 75-inch. People buying fridge, stove, treadmill, you name it, in price smart. Last I checked, price smart don't offer hire purchase. So these things are being paid for in full one time, but we can't afford to put food on the table, and the people of this country is suffering and starving and they have no work and all of that. Yeah. That's in UNC's reality, right? But as one son named Tugi say, all I need to stop drinking cocoa tea and Lipton tea and start drinking reality. Yeah? To UNC listeners, you all could fool the waterfront ilk with that nonsense. Banks making supernormal profits that they didn't make between 2010 to 2015. Yeah? Prestige holdings and companies like that recorded billions in revenue. But all in with them pay no property tax. They're expanding physical infrastructure, opening branches all over the place. No property tax. Paris and the family collecting so many millions in rent. No property tax. All of them, but Rowley is the one making the rich richer. It's because of Rowley that Mr. Aboud still paying $3,800 a month for 35 acres for 5 Islands Water Park, right? Yes, Rowley do that. Rowley give him that 35 acres, and Rowley tell him pay 3,800 a month when the valuator say 500,000. Rowley, yes, Rowley. Rowley want to make the rich richer. Let me get to this interview, right? In the interest of time, because I start late today. Well, boy, as I tell all, if all those of you who listened to that interview, if you didn't listen to it and you have the consternation so to do, just pull back up by 95.5 and pull up the interview yesterday. That was an interview. My gosh. The amount of things that I hear in that. Anyway, as I said, them fellas kind of let me down a little bit. So, one of the first things I heard Mr. Griffith say, right, so the question was put to him with respect to this whole firearm users license report that he is trying to prevent the Prime Minister from laying in the Parliament. And based on his explanation yesterday, he says the reason why he doesn't want the Prime Minister to lay it in Parliament, he wants the Prime Minister to lay it in the public so that he could sue the Prime Minister for the contents of the report. But in the Parliament, if the Prime Minister lays it in the Parliament, he could lie because Parliament is the one place that politicians could go and say what they want, make allegations and accusations under the cover of parliamentary privilege and not face legal consequence. Now again, you could fool certain people with that kind of talk. You ain't gonna fool me, and there are plenty of people out there who know better you can't fool. So let's talk about you want the Prime Minister to say it in public so you could sue him. Sue him for what? Sue him for what? The Prime Minister, if he were to lay, well, you can't lay the report in public. The report has to be laid because his public funds would have been used to conduct the investigation into this matter and a report generated. So it's a public report. And the process is it should be laid ideally in the Parliament first. Then it could go outside and whatnot. But he is saying he is fighting for the Prime Minister to lay it. Now, if the Prime Minister lays it in the Parliament and he says whatever it is, well then it should be able to be repeated outside. So I don't understand this point about you wanting to say it outside so you could sue him. We have examples of how these things operate. The live spot report. And when you listen to Mr. Griffith, because he says it's an audit and it's an audit, and when you're saying and how you could conduct an audit and you don't interview the persons who are named in the audit and who are mentioned in the audit, if you don't talk to these people to get their side of the story, then the audit is there's a fraud audit and all of that, and how you can't rely on the findings of that audit. But yet still, Kamla Prasad-Bissessar and the UNC continue to this day to make an issue about an internal audit into Petrotrin, which made certain findings with respect to AV drilling and the fake oil, as she labeled it. Is there anywhere in that audit report that speaks to any interviews being done with Nizambash of AV drilling? Did anybody, anywhere in this internal audit report, does it say anybody spoke with the principals of AV drilling to get their side of the story? Anybody can help me with that? To the best of my knowledge, that never took place. But they put in weight. I never hear him say, well, that you see all that claim about fee, but and here is to him. He's saying if it's an audit and you don't interview the people who are named in the audit, then the audit is no good. Basically, that's what he said. The audit no good. That's a sham audit, and if you lay it in public or wherever it is, you could sue. Okay? And you want to sue and say whatever. Now, he was complaining in the same interview that the Prime Minister refused to give him money for him to hire experts to conduct investigations with respect to the wells and so on in the same AV drilling matter. So you're Commissioner of Police. You are asked to investigate the findings of an audit report, which did not interview the person's name, namely AV Drilling, Nizambash, and others from that company. But you so believed in what that report claimed that you decided to investigate it and you wanted money to investigate and all of that. But you're contradicting yourself. Because how can you as commissioner put weight on an audit report that did not interview the persons who are so mentioned in the report? But you have an issue with investigations into an audit report that was done, not just on you, because you see, Mr. Griffith needs to understand. The audit report that was conducted by Mr. Virgil and the other guys and so on, it wasn't only about you. He says he hasn't seen the report. So if you haven't seen the report, you don't know what's in the report, why don't you want the report laid? Because if you haven't seen it, you don't know what's in it, how can you say that what's in it is incriminating against you when you have not seen the report? But you want the Prime Minister to come out and say in the public what you don't know is in the report. I'm confused. So you don't even know if it is that your name is just mentioned in the report as the commissioner or whatever it is and stuff and so on. But you're going to all lengths, spending tons of money in legal fees to have the report, the court injunct the laying of the report in the parliament. And as he said in that interview yesterday, he hasn't seen the report. All he knows is what he's heard in the public. He would have heard from certain things like Christopher would have mentioned about some of the firearms that firearms that would have been procured as a result of FULs that were given out, while of the 4,000 plus FULs that he gave, some of these firearms have been found to have been used in crimes. But again, he says he only knows what he hears, but he don't know what is in the report. So it's like this story I always recount, where the animals in the jungle were having a party, and at the end of the party, King Lion says the ugliest man in the party had to wash the dishes, and the monkey jumped up and said, "I'm not washing no dishes." The lion never say you were the ugliest man, but clearly it fell in your garden, and therefore you jump out yourself, right? So he don't want the report laid. Okay, there were 3 reports that I know of so far. So there was the report that was commissioned by the National Security Council, of which the Prime Minister is the head. Mr. Griffith said that the National Security Council has no operational powers and whatnot and thing, and is not mandated by the constitutional kind of bacchanal, right? All of that. He said plenty yesterday. So apparently the National Security Council under Keith Rowley has no power, but when it was under Kamala, it had plenty. So not interested in that report. If the Prime Minister comes and were to read the report, the Prime Minister isn't saying anything that he make up on his own. He is merely reporting the findings of a report commissioned by the National Security Council. So what you suing him for? Reading a report? You could do that. You could sue somebody for reading a report. If the Prime Minister comes and reads the report verbatim and he gives no commentary on the findings of the report, then how can you sue? Sue him on what basis? And you see, that's the nonsense. When it is that they had the live sport report, Ashwin Creed and the other guy claimed that this audit was done, this audit report was done, and they were not given an opportunity to respond to the report. And as a result of that, the report was quashed in the courts. Who sue? Anybody sue Kamala and for reading out the report and so on? There were a lot of things that were said about that report subsequent to her laying it in the parliament. And the issue here is that because it was published in the parliament, the individuals were able to go to court and argue a case that here it is, a report was produced, we were not interviewed, we were not given an opportunity to respond to the findings or the claims in the report, and therefore we were disadvantaged. It was not due process of law. And on that basis, the court quashed the report, not the findings of the report, not the contents of the report. The court said the basis that the fact that the report was published without giving these 2 men an opportunity to speak or to rebut what was in the report, that was a travesty of justice, a miscarriage of justice, and therefore the entire report had to be squashed. And the judge basically told the audit committee, go back and do it over, but this time talk to Mr. Creed, and I can't remember what the other guy's name is. That is what the judge said. But that was the panel about some lying and say the court say that the findings was fraud and all of that rubbish. He can sell that whatever a pound he wants to the UNC literati. But the rest of us, we know better. So go from here with that. Go from here with that nonsense. We really don't want to hear that stupid talk, right? Every time we hear that, we just yawn because we know the truth. But Mr. Griffith talked about this report and Dr. Rowley. He went on to say, nobody has gotten arrested so far with this thing, and that politicians cannot hire civilians to do reports and audits and whatnot. And he referenced the Stanley John report, which I will touch on again today, right? First of all, the Prime Minister did not hire Stanley John to do any report. It was the Police Service Commission under then Chairman Bliss C. Prasad that retained the services of Stanley John. And what I find to be hypocritical and what I find to be disingenuous on the part of Mr. Griffith, now that he is claiming that, politicians can do that and you're paying people a big set of money for them to write a report to incriminate people. Okay, all right. And he's challenging now the Stanley John report. But I recall when he was Commissioner of Police, I do understand, I recall, I'm running my life. When he was Commissioner of Police and Mr. John started doing his report, Gary Griffith is on record as having said he would have contacted Mr. John to inquire as to whether he, Gary Griffith, was the subject of Mr. John's report, Justice Stanley John's report, and Justice John told him, no, you are not the subject of this inquiry. And as such, he had no issue with Mr. John, Justice Stanley John, conducting this inquiry. He didn't say at that time, well, the political directorate cannot hire civilians or whoever it is to conduct an audit. You were fine with it because Justice John told you, you are not the subject of this inquiry. Right? You are not the subject of the inquiry. So he was happy with it. You had no public issues with it. But then the findings come out now. All of a sudden, you have an issue. I repeat that Dr. Rowley did not commission Stanley John. That was the Police Service Commission. And they were well within their rights to do that because as part of the due diligence process to populate the merit list, the Police Service Commission has a responsibility to do everything in their power to get all the information that they need to ensure that when you send this merit list to the Parliament, that every single name on that merit list can stand up to the most robust of scrutiny, and that every single name on that merit list, HA, how are you going? Every single name on that merit list is above reproach. So if it is, now, I don't think there's only any specific parameters as to what that due diligence exercise involves. So when the Police Service Commission has to conduct their due diligence, so everybody apply, we need to make sure that everybody here clean, because we don't want to send a list to Parliament. We tell the Parliament, well, we did all the searches that we needed to do. Every name on this list here clean. Nobody have any criminal records. Nobody name will not get called up in no bubble. So go ahead and pick one of these persons and make them the Commissioner of Police. And then you do that. And subsequent to Commissioner being selected, information comes to hand stating, well, you see the man who just appointed as Commissioner there. He really in some bubble, Yeah, you see the person you all appointed as Deputy Commissioner. He in some bubble. Yeah. So you didn't have that information. And imagine the embarrassment the country has to suffer to see the Commissioner of Police being escorted out of the police headquarters in handcuffs. It will be an indictment on the Police Service Commission for not having done the job. So if the Prime Minister, in his capacity as the head of the National Security Council, commissioned an inquiry for his own edification, and for that of the edification of the, and for that of the, thanks Diane, because the other device was blocking it. Right, for his own benefit, because he needs to know, remember at the end of the day, as National Security Council chair, and as Prime Minister, he has a vote in deciding who the Commissioner of Police is going to be. And he needs to satisfy himself that when he goes to Parliament and this merit list comes to him, that he and his cabinet colleagues have all the information that they need to make the right choice. Now, if it is that Dr. Rowley had decided, well, I'm hearing things on the ground, people saying it have certain racket with respect to the issuance of firearm users licenses. And the only person who could sign off on the firearm users license is the commissioner of police. And if I am hearing these things on the ground, and we know that the exercise of picking a new commissioner or renewing the term of office for the existing commissioner is coming up soon, I need to make sure that I conduct an investigation to get the information that I need to satisfy myself and that of the rest of the cabinet and the government members in the House that we're making the right choice. It had nothing to do with no vendetta. Yes, the man, I consider the man to be disrespectful, and as Dr. Rowley would have indicated, he would have lost confidence in Mr. Griffith a year earlier. But his decision to conduct this investigation was tied to the need for him, if it is that because he has resources the Police Service Commission does not have, as part of their due diligence. And look what happened. As a result of that investigation, Dr. Rowley would have gotten information. Now, we don't know what the contents of the report is, that particular report. We don't know what is contained in it. But clearly, it has information that, as Dr. Rowley described, it made for very disturbing reading. But Gary Griffith's name wasn't the only one name on that list. We've seen subsequent, contrary to what he said yesterday, a number of persons, police officers, have been arrested and charged with respect to misbehavior in public office as it pertains to the issuance of firearm users licenses under Mr. Griffith's term. So the possibility exists that the information contained in that report might have been incriminating not to Mr. Griffith, but perhaps to one or more of the other nominees on the list. Persons who may have offered themselves to replace Mr. Griffith as Commissioner of Police, and therefore might have that investigation might have unearthed information, but we wouldn't know because, again, Mr. Griffith is trying to block the release of any of these reports. And in the course of that, Prime Minister did what he had to do. So information comes to him based on this investigation, which he says was made for very disturbing reading. But in any event, the findings of that inquiry could not result in any charges. The only thing that could have come out of that, because as Mr. Griffith rightly points out, the men who conducted that investigation were retired police officers and I think one former senior member of the Defense Force, who are now civilians, so they can't charge anybody. So the outcome of that inquiry, the Prime Minister would have had to forward a copy of that report to the police, for the police now to conduct an official investigation into the findings of that report, to corroborate or to dispel whatever it is was in that and either exonerate or charge. So that report that Dr. Rowley has, nobody could get locked up from that in and of itself, right? That is just providing the police with a roadmap to follow. Well, look, having spoken to these persons, this is what we unearthed. You all need to follow up on this now and delve a little deeper to get information that could result in people being charged. So for Mr. Griffith to be fighting down that report, to me, it makes no sense, right? At the end of the day, the question is asked, what is in this report that you don't want people to know about? If there's anything in the report that is a lie, one would expect that you would have hard facts to show, well, okay, the report says this about me, here's the proof that this is a lie. The report says this, that I did this while I was commissioner, well, look, the evidence here to show that is a lie. I would think you would welcome the opportunity to do that, to rubbish this report. And then you could prove once and for all to say, well, you see, I tell earlier, it was a deliberate thing on the part of Keith Rowley to set me up because he considers me to be a threat and all of that. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. The Stanley John report, which I will touch on shortly, commissioned by the Police Service Commission. Now, one of the things that continues to get me damn upset, you see, with these UNC supporters, and this merit list, that Anil Roberts insists that he must continue to push and talk about who intercepted the merit list and the Prime Minister, that the Prime Minister interfered. And listen, I've made the point on numerous occasions, and I will make it for one last time. If Dr. Rowley wanted to get rid of Gary Griffith, he did not need to intercept any merit list. And I need to continue to make this point pellucidly clear for the benefit of the UNC supporters and members who continue to make themselves look foolish by running on social media and talking this nonsense. The process is The Police Service Commission populates the merit list. They conduct their interviews. They interview all of the persons who have put forward their names or who have put forward their applications to be considered or to have their names put on the list to become the next Commissioner of Police. There is a process that the PSC has to follow, which is part of the due diligence and interview process, and then you shortlist. So based on everybody who submits an application, we interviewed everybody, and these are the people who we think best suit or best satisfy the criteria to become the Commissioner of Police. You send the list to the Parliament. The government would then lead off the debate. You would go through the names. The government is under no obligation whatsoever to pick any name on that merit list. They could run through all of the names and say, well, here, we're not satisfied with any of these people here. We don't think any of them would make a good Commissioner of Police. Scrap that list. PSC, go and do it over. Try and get us some fresh nominees. Or if it is that you want to stick by any of the nominees whose names you have on this list, you need to wheel and come again. Do better. Provide us more, something stronger, a more compelling argument as to why it is we should support any of the people on this list. Hence the reason, in 2018, Gary Griffith was able to become the Commissioner of Police. His name was fourth on the list. They bypassed the other three people who were ahead of him, who scored better. In all of the criteria, he was number 4. So there were 3 persons who the PSC felt would have done a better job of Commissioner of Police than Gary Griffith. Don't tell him that though, because you know his ego can't take that. No, his ego can't handle that. So be your damn self. I am the best there ever was, the best there ever will be. I am the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Under my tenure, crime was lowest. Under my tenure, public confidence in the police service was at the highest, 55%. And when I came in, it was 14%. And he kept repeating that yesterday and so on. Under my tenure, this happened. And under my tenure, that happened. And right. Every other commissioner that they had before me since 1962 was a waste of time. And I should have been Commissioner of Police every time I came out of my mother's womb because I was bright and I'm the best thing ever. And right. Maybe I listened to him yesterday as the impression that you get. Anything that he does, he is the best. There is none greater than he. So if he should become prime minister, he would be the best prime minister the country has ever seen. None before him, and there shall be none after him. Okay. Right? So, information comes to the prime minister. He wants to save the PSC the embarrassment of submitting a list to the parliament for debate, which, based on the information that he has before him, indicates that there may be somebody's name on that list that should not be there based on this information. And what did he do? Gave the information to Ms. Prasad, and it is for her to consider. But the UNC wants to give you the impression that Dr. Rowley called, I don't know, the president and say, oh, I could come and see you today. And the president said, well, yeah, I could come through, but Blessed Prasad coming through around 1 o'clock to drop off the merit list. Yeah, so I just telling you, so if you want to come, you can come after that. And I say, well, I will come 1 o'clock when she there. Yeah, and he tell Special Branch here, I want to let it time it perfectly. So just as we driving in is when Blessed Prasad driving out, and you will block her car, and I will come out and I will go and stand up and have a conversation with her on the side of the president's house. I will say, hey, here what now? Look, hold this day. Go back and tell the president they want to take back the merit list. That's the impression that they want to give you, right? Blessed Prasad would have gotten the information. It is for her to decide. Does this change our views of any of the persons on the merit list? What should we do? Nowhere in the Constitution, despite the fact I've asked UNC supporters on more than one occasion, please tell us, where in the Constitution does it say that the president cannot withdraw the merit list? I'm still waiting for them to tell me where in the Constitution it says that. Which section of the Constitution says that once the president receives the merit list, he or she cannot withdraw it. That it must be forwarded, that the president is just a rubber stamp or a courier. So the president receives it, and it's just for the president now to take it or send it to the parliament for it to be debated. Up to now, they can't tell me that. So clearly, the Constitution is silent on that. When does the due diligence process end? So if it is you go and you hand the president a document now, the merit list, and information comes to you on the same day, you know, well, okay, it's not to say, well, as soon as you hand the president the merit list, the president call the messenger and say, hey, carry this in the parliament there for me. It doesn't work that way. There is a process, letter has to be done up and so on with the president's signature and to forward it. It's a formal process. So if information comes to hand to the PSC chairman that one or more of the nominees on this list is tainted, compromised, what's she supposed to do? Ignore it? What is she supposed to do? You get something that says here, there is reason for concern for at least one of the nominees or more. Too late, yes, I don't get the president, not to hell with that, yes, whatever happen. Send the damn list to the parliament and let them deal with that. That is not my problem. When does the due diligence cease? The former president was a former judge. She has a deeper understanding of the law than most other people. So, and as someone who would be familiar with the Constitution, so she must know this could be done, it can't be done. But I was making the point before. If Dr. Rowley didn't want Gary Griffith, he had to go and intercept no merit list. He could just wait till the list come to the parliament and just bypass Gary Griffith's name, assuming that Gary Griffith's name was the name that was compromised. Assuming that the information that he had compromises Gary Griffith. And if his name is at the top of the list, you bypass it just as you did when he was selected and go to the next name. But let us not forget, when it is Gary Griffith was selected, remember who the UNC's choice was? A man by the name of, what was his name by? Oh gosh, you know the name was just then, it slipped me. Is when Ganga Singh got up in the parliament and talk about the reason why they want to bypass this guy, Tulal Singh or something, so it's because he's an Indian. Remember? Always race. Everything is about race, right? And then this same guy ended up, his name get caught up in some land business and whatnot and so on. And he was a deputy while Gary Griffith had now become police commissioner. And what did he do in that period of time? I think he was in charge of some division or something, or the acting deputy or deputy commissioner for something. There was no improvement under him in his deputy position. Yeah, but that's who they wanted, right? They didn't support Gary Griffith then, no. They abstained. Their former parliamentary colleague, they abstained. But all of a sudden today, they are the biggest defenders of Mr. Griffith. But we're supposed to remember that, right? Now, I listened to Mr. Griffith yesterday. And, well, not yesterday, but I listened to this interview. And some of the things that he spoke about gives me the impression, what were we really paying for when he was National Security Advisor? Because he listed and itemized a number of things that he says he was not responsible for. Things that he would have advised against, such as, he says he didn't advise the government to get rid of the 3 OPVs. He told them keep one because based on his assessment, 1 OPV would have required something like about 80 or so officers at any one time to run. And since only 80 officers had been sent to be trained, and it was 3 OPVs, that it didn't make sense to keep the other 2 because it wouldn't have trained officers to operate those other 2. So he told them to keep at least 1 for the 80 officers who went to be trained. And they didn't take that, the cabinet didn't take that advice. He says he also told them with respect to, there was something else he touched on, the blimp. He didn't tell them to get rid of the blimp. But again, as National Security Advisor, he didn't advise that. He advised against it. And the cabinet didn't take it as his advice. He advised the Prime Minister not to disband SAUT, S-A-U-T-T. They didn't take his advice. And he says, hence the reason when he came back, he tried to bring back SAUT, but this time he tried to do it under the guise of, instead of calling it the S-A-U-T-T, he created the S-O-R-T. But that was a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing to reference the same SAUT, which he was in support of because he praised Mr. Manning, and he realized that Mr. Manning's vision with respect to national security was so great and all that. So if everything, Kamala hired you as her advisor, her national security advisor, and everything that you advise her to do, she does the opposite. So then what he was paying you for? You were collecting a salary as national security advisor to get bad advice? Because clearly, no advice that you gave the Prime Minister thought made sense. No advice that you gave the cabinet thought was good advice. So you were collecting a salary every month for giving bad advice. Because they didn't take nothing you say. And on the heels of that, they still made you a Minister of National Security. So your advice wasn't good as National Security Advisor, but you get a promotion to the Minister of National Security, giving you more authority to implement now your bad advice. You understand what it is that we were dealing with between 2010 to 2015? That making any sense? The man advice not good enough when he's an advisor, but you make him the Minister of National Security? Really? Everything. So he's saying, don't blame me for this, don't blame me for that, don't blame me for the other and the next. Blame them. I tell them wasn't to do it, and they did it. Everything that you gave advice for, they decided to take the opposite. All right. So don't blame him. But he has all of the answers now, so make him Prime Minister. Right? That making sense to him. So a caller called in and asked the question. They said the over 4,000 firearm users licenses that you gave out, isn't that an indication that you were unable or you weren't up to the task of protecting the citizens, so you thought it best to treat with the problem of crime by giving more people guns? And after, of course, dissing the caller, he says that's rubbish, that's nonsense. The fact that I gave out 0.05% of the firearm users licenses for the over 50,000 people who had applied for FULs, that you are saying that is an indication that I couldn't do my job. And so I was giving people guns. So you gave out 0.5 because that is probably the most you were able to give out in the time that you were there. But you had good reason to believe that you would have been there for another 3 years and probably would have been commissioner of police until you're dead, which could have been many, many years, in which case you would have continued to give out more FULs and more FULs and more FULs. Just like he says now that if you make him Prime Minister, that he is going to make it easier as well for the average citizen to get a gun. The same thing Kamala Persad-Bissessar is saying. Make me Prime Minister. And you see all the laws that the PNM put in place to restrict gun ownership, I will get rid of that. So long as you are a law-abiding citizen, you don't have a criminal record, and you have sound mind, apply, and you're GT. And he's singing the same song. But he's saying to this caller, the fact that I gave out so many firearm users licenses is not an indication that I couldn't use the police service, or that I couldn't run the police service in such a way as to contain criminality. So I needed to give the average citizens guns so that they could fight crime on their own and protect themselves, because the police service under me can't function. Then he went on to say that under him, and you see somebody like Gary Griffith, because yesterday he said that the Prime Minister gave him a budget of 45 million to go after the UNC opposition, and that he was told to take this money and use it to lock up opposition members, to investigate them and to lock them up. But as I said, like every time Gary Griffith speaks about that, the amount of money that he says the Prime Minister gave him accrues interest. Because first it was 30 million, then it went to 35 million, then it went to 40 million. Now it reached 45 million. How many millions did you really get? How did it grow from 30 to 45? As I said, the only thing I could come up with is that every time he tells that story, he had to add interest to the amount of money that he says he got. That the Prime Minister gave him this big budget, and that you couldn't find money to give him to run the police service, and he always had to wait 6 months to get money from Coleman Boots and all of that. And that his budget as commissioner was reduced by some 250 million as opposed to what other commissioners of police had gotten. But if you present yourself as being the GOAT, the greatest of all times, and you could run the police service so efficiently, well, then you don't need all that money. You are about innovation. So, added to which, when he came in, he said that the overtime bill was some 300 and something million, and he was able to bring it down significantly. So the savings that you made in reducing the amount of overtime, couldn't that have made up for the shortfall? Because if the other commissioners was using this money to be paying $300+ million a year just in overtime alone, and you came in and you put your foot down and said all this overtime is unnecessary, and I think you reduced the bill by 100 and something million. Well, then what you're complaining for is just a difference of a shortfall of 100 million or so. You had to buy any vehicles while you were the commissioner of police. What else did you do? What else did you spend money on that you needed to sustain this previous budget? Because clearly we weren't getting results under previous commissioners for the big budget. So what would you have done with it? The money that you're complaining about now, that you ain't get. Brand new uniforms? I haven't listened to the entire interview, so I don't know if the question was put to him with respect to the two men who were accused of kidnapping and killing Andrea Barrett, as to what was the role of SORT in the death of these two men, one of whom we are told fell off a chair in the hospital and died, sustained significant life-threatening injuries as a result of falling off of a chair. Why he ended up in the hospital in the first place to be sitting on a chair, I don't know if these questions was asked, but perhaps when I listen to the rest of the interview, maybe the question would be answered. Albeit it's a very difficult interview to listen to because it degenerated very, very quickly. Let me read this for you, right? A well-oiled criminal enterprise, and this is the Stanley John report, which is in the public domain. Findings of which are in the public domain, but I ain't seen nobody suing Stanley John. This report hasn't been laid in the parliament. So why don't sue Stanley John? And Stanley's here said, Stanley tell you that he not investigating you. You are not the subject of the inquiry. But if in the process of conducting the inquiry, your name get called up in thing, whose fault is that? Right? The PCA, the Police Complaints Authority, is also conducting an interview into the issuance of firearm users licenses under Mr. Griffith. I don't know what the status of that investigation is, if it's still ongoing, if it's complete, or what. Are we going to file an injunction to prevent PCA Director David West also from filing his report? I don't know. But at the start of the interview, Mr. Griffith made mention that nobody was arrested with respect to that whole investigation, right? Let me just read this quickly. January 23rd, 2023, Express article entitled 8 cops, 8 charged in FUL probe. 8 police officers have been charged in connection with the investigation into the issuance of firearm users' licenses. And the 8 officers were charged yesterday with the offenses of conspiracy to misconduct themselves in public office. 2 of them, Sergeant David Swanson and ASP Aaron Beddoe, were previously charged in May 2022 with multiple counts of misbehavior in public office. And this was in relation to allegations of the granting of firearm variations, including the receipt of extra ammunition. The Express was told that yesterday morning instructions were received by officers of the Professional Standards Bureau to charge 8 officers after attorneys Terry Boyer, Larry Boyer, and Shiva Buru filed habeas corpus writs at the High Court to compel the Office of the Commissioner of Police to release the arrested officers. Up to 8:30 p.m. last night, the Express was unable to confirm the identities of the other 6 officers, and their names had not been released by the police service. The investigations were spearheaded by Senior Superintendent Suzette Martin, Sergeant Amir Mohammed, Corporal Jofiel, and Woman Police Constable Sampson and Marshall. And the 8 officers were subsequently granted bail by JP Young at the Aruka Police Station, with instructions to appear before a magistrate's court, a Port of Spain magistrate's court at a later date. Last year, 5 police officers and 2 civilians were charged in connection with the investigation, and more than 26 charges have been so far laid during the course of the investigation. And the accused who are currently before the courts are PC's Lyndon Bishop, charged in August 2021, with 2 counts of soliciting and 2 counts of receiving. Chris Turbani, also charged in August 2021 with 1 count of soliciting. Corporal Kareem Jamaluddin, charged in September 2022 with soliciting $25,000 from a man to expedite an FUL. Sergeant Swanson, charged in May 2022 with 10 counts of misbehavior in public office, and ASP Beddoe, ASP, right? You see the rank, charged also in May 2022 with 5 counts of misbehavior in public office. Charged alongside the officers were civilians Dylan Gosain with 4 counts of uttering forged documents, and Mukesh Gosain with possession of firearm for the purpose of trafficking. Now, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter how many people are arrested here. There is grounds, right? So how is Mr. Griffith going to explain these 8 persons who were charged, 6 of whom are police officers, and there were more arrests after that, senior officers, right? But as he says, he implemented the most robust system for the issuance of firearm users licenses, the most robust. So there was no way any bubble was supposed to be able to take place there. And as he says, put me as prime minister. And that same robust system that I put in place, I will ensure that it continues so that citizens could get firearm users licenses. But yet still, under this robust system that he put in place, look at when these men get locked up. Not before he come in, for crimes they committed while he was commissioner of police. Under this revamped and robust system, that's when they get locked up. They didn't get locked up under Stephen Williams. They didn't get locked up under, what's his name? James Philbert. They didn't get locked up under Hilton Guy. They didn't get locked up under Trevor Paul. No. They got locked up for things that they did under Gary when he was the commissioner of police. Under Bobol that they alleged to have committed while he was commissioner of police. So how is it that they felt that it was easier to get away with these things under his robust system as opposed to what obtained under other commissioners of police? At the end of the day, as he said yesterday, the final buck stops with him. He is the only man who could issue. So it's only his signature. But when you hear anything about people signing for on behalf of the commissioner and all of this nonsense, is that allowed? If you know that that is something that could cause problems, then you issue a memo to whoever is responsible for issuing the FUL. Well, when I say issue, that once the commissioner signs off on the file, whoever is responsible for drafting the FUL and so on, must ascertain that the signature on the file, on the whatever document that they sign off on, that it is the commissioner's signature, not no so-and-so or for and on behalf of the commissioner. Anything that you see so-and-so for and on behalf of, send that back upstairs for immediate investigation, because nobody is authorized to sign on behalf of the commissioner. When the commissioner, the substantive commissioner, is out of office, then even then, the commissioner is the only person who's supposed to be signing. 4,000 firearm users licenses given out. The question was asked him yesterday. So why it is you had to give some people 5 and 10 firearm users licenses? And the answer was, well, you know, some people are trainers and they require multiple firearms, because in order for them to be able to train in different firearms, they must have a FUL for each different type. And some people are hunters and some people engage in sport shooting or these. Really? So the former PSC commissioner who got 10 firearm users licenses, he's a hunter? Is he a trainer? Is he engaged in sport shooting? Again, these are the questions that you need to put to the man. But instead, the back and forth and the breakdown and the shouting match that I listened to yesterday, I mean, come on, guys. Come on now, man. Well, let this man, and the disrespect, you know. Yes, the people invited you, but you're supposed to know that this is a PNM program and they were going to rake you over the coals and grill you. And therefore, come with your composure. But like you leave composure and decorum in the car and walk inside there with ego alone. So it's just ego pelting left, right, and center. Anyway, but he said nobody ain't get locked up, right? Nobody ain't get locked up. 8 people so far. And the investigation continues. But thus far, 8 people get locked up. He noted, however, dozens of officers are charged via investigations done by the Professional Standards Bureau, and it showed that the TTPS was working effectively and was not a unit unto itself. Many, when they hear anything regarding FUL issues, they will want to link any new incidents reported with me because I have challenged the laying of the audit report in Parliament. This is Gary Griffith, I think, speaking. Yes. Hear this. Griffith, I have never been questioned. They ask you that. Speaking with the Express yesterday, former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith said he had no direct comment on the charging of the 8 officers as he did not think it fell within his current purview. But see, nobody can get locked up. You sign off. It's not under your current purview. Anyway. He says, at one point while I was there, we had about 50,000 applicants and I sought to clear that and brought the number down by 10% by approvals. To this day, no one can point to me and say that they acquired their firearms via illegal means or they were unqualified and yet still received it. Take note of that, Let me repeat that. To this day, no one could point to me and say they acquired their firearms via illegal means or that they were unqualified, yet still received it. Unqualified. To this day, I have yet to be approached or questioned by the PSB personnel, and that is the point. At no time have I ever been questioned or seen as a person of interest in any way. So if other police officers have been charged, it's only desperate or foolish politicians or those with a political agenda that can blame the former commissioner of police. But you are on record as boasting that you created this most robust process for screening people to receive firearm users licenses. And yet still under this robust system, as I will read shortly, there were persons with criminal records who get firearm users licenses. Criminal records. How? People who want gun charges get firearm users licenses under your robust system? And you sign off on that? In his opinion, more police manpower resources have been used to investigate citizens getting legal firearms than to investigate illegal firearms, which account for almost 100% of the murders. Almost 100%. So I guess the less than almost, wherever is the difference? Anyway. He also suggested that if persons has issues with the legal framework for how firearms were issued and the number of guns that can be issued, then they should make petitions to the state to change the law. Hubris. I move on. A well-oiled criminal enterprise. The Stanley John report into granting of firearms users licenses. So a thriving, well-oiled, white-collar criminal enterprise in respect of the grant of firearm users licenses and other restricted licenses was being conducted under the nose of then Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Here we're under his nose, not under his chin, not on his chest, not under his kneecap. See how close? Right there, under his nose. And you know. So if it's right under your nose and you know, when it happening at arm's length, you expect to know? Yeah? When it happening below your chest, you expect to know? All right. This was one of the conclusions of retired appeal court judge Stanley John, who was appointed by the former Bliss Sipasad-led Police Service Commission to inquire into allegations of corruption in the issuance of FULs. So again, I repeat, it was the Police Service Commission, not Dr. Rowley, that hired Stanley John. So somebody needs to let Gary know that, right? He needs to check that next time he's doing an interview on that. The scathing report, which has been submitted to the Police Service Commission and which the Sunday Express had sight of, details the goings-on within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service under the leadership of Gary Griffith, not under the leadership of Stephen Williams or Ulla Christopher. John also recommended a police probe into several matters raised during his investigation and the errant persons brought to justice and not be allowed to go free. John said, "My investigation leaves me with the firm view of the existence within the TTPS of a highly dysfunctional system, not robust, for processing applications for FULs and other related licenses or permits. The system is replete with opportunities for illegal, irregular, and other corrupt practices. Clearly, the advantage taken of these opportunities has been widespread. Indeed, the then Commissioner, Gary Griffith, has mentioned that he was aware of the significance of this problem by way of several reports made to him. His efforts to address it have clearly been woefully unsuccessful. Woefully unsuccessful. His own explanation of his involvement in the process, in my opinion, was in breach of the law as set out in Section 16 of the Firearms Act, and this has been a masterclass in dysfunctionalization." So it's Stanley John who is saying that the involvement or the explanation of his involvement in the process, Mr. Griffith's explanation, was in breach of the law. It's not Keith Rowley saying that. This is Stanley John saying this. And presumably to the Express. So why do you sue Stanley John? So you're saying if Dr. Rowley come out in the public and says the same thing, you will sue him, but you're not suing Stanley John for saying the same thing, right? So it makes no sense to me. I'm only pursuing legal relief to prevent Dr. Rowley, to challenge Dr. Rowley to come out in the public and read the contents of the report. But Stanley John, in this Express article, is telling us, in the first instance, that Mr. Griffith broke the law under Section 16 of the Firearms Act. His involvement in the process, that's the first one. But it's Rowley, and you're fixated on the first report that the National Security Council initiated. As Rowley and the politicians paying people millions of dollars and big money to write a report. So when you hire a man, you could tell the man, hey, put this in the report and put that in the report, and the report to make the man look bad. As if it is that the man wouldn't have evidence to challenge it. Knowing full well that this report, notwithstanding, can't result in any charges being laid. All it could do is lead to an investigation to corroborate or to dismiss, right? Under the Firearms Act, it is the Commissioner of Police who grants approvals of FULs. Questions about employee. John pointed out to a refusal by a senior TTPS manager during his probe to answer questions about a particular TTPS employee troubling. Additionally, the refusal of the manager's name called to address questions referred to him by John concerning, name called, involvement in the operations of the Firearms Permit section continues to be very troubling and ought not to be swept under the carpet. And it should be noted that name called was hired by him, working closely with him, and evidently had a significant part of play in the process leading up to the grant of FULs. And it is highly unlikely that employees name called could have played such a pivotal role without the knowledge and approval of manager's name called. Right? So a senior manager, Mr. John's investigation. Mr. John didn't go to bed one night, perform a seance, light candle all around the bed, hang up some clove, some garlic, some rosemary and sage, use what is called red lavender, tie up his head with a head tie, went to sleep, and all of these things came to him. All of the information he put in the report was based on persons employed in the police service with whom he would have spoken. What he put into the report is what he was told to him by these people. He didn't make up nothing here. He would have drawn certain conclusions based on what was told to him. All right? And if you have persons employed in the TTPS are telling you that this is what took place and that is what took place, but we are trying to fight down this report and others. So if two reports point to wrongdoing, and you have a third report that is outstanding with the PSC, the PCA, the Police Complaints Authority, coming out with similar findings by different investigators, and all of them find it had bubble. But according to the former commissioner, nah, kind of bubble there. So it's a robust system. I go on. He said both the employee and the manager have been unhelpful in explaining the employee's role and have adamantly refused to proffer any explanation to him for the numerous documents relating to FULs found at the employee's residence. When a search warrant was executed last year, and the documents included an application form for FULs in favor of several people, correspondence addressed to the commissioner from individuals, and 19 applications in favor of several individuals. The employee was on a 2-year contract to the TTPS at a salary of $10,332 per month. Now, if it is Mr. Griffith is complaining that he had gotten a cut in his budget, 250 million less than what his most recent predecessor has gotten. But yet still you are able to hire somebody on a 2-year contract for $10,332 to do what? So the money you're getting is not enough to manage the TTPS as you met it, with the complement of employees that you met. But with less money, you were able to hire. And we know a lot of persons who hired under Mr. Griffith, for whatever reason. John said the employee declined to be interviewed, and as a result, he emailed the manager on October 18, 2021, seeking a response to the following questions. Was the contract of name called amended in any way? Did he, the manager, at any time assign the employee duties in the firearm section? Did he authorize the employee to remove documents relating to the issuance of FULs from the Police Administration Building and Firearm section? Can he advise the role to which the employee was assigned? And he got no answer. Serious flaws and corruption. In a withering conclusion, John said, the commissioner has not performed the functions entrusted to him by law in relation to the issuance of firearm user's license. To use his own language, he depended on the integrity of the system, a system which he admitted had serious flaws and opened itself to corruption. This is the same robust system that he says he created. It does not appear that the commissioner satisfied himself with all applicants for firearm import permits, firearm users' licenses, firearm users' employees' certificates, and firearm dealers' licenses had good reasons for importing. purchasing and acquiring or having in their possession a firearm or ammunition without danger to the public safety or the peace, or that there was any reason to believe those applicants were fit to be entrusted with a firearm or ammunition. So John is saying that in all of these areas, the commissioner was woefully lacking. Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. In fact, Mr. Griffith admitted yesterday in that interview that he was the one who gave a dealership license to Brent Thomas, the infamous Brent Thomas that the UNC continues to prostitute for political gain, whose arrest they continue to prostitute. And we've seen that subsequently, not only does Mr. Thomas have questions to answer with respect to the issuance of or the sale of firearms to persons who had bogus FULs, we see now that he is also, that in addition to that, that he was in possession of certain firearms and other contraband, which is prohibited under the Firearms Act. And his name get called up in wrong stand-up with Board of Inland Revenue, where a former employee was recently charged with issuing false VAT clearance certificates and tax certificates and so on, by using another employee's computer, probably to conceal his wrongdoing. And these fraudulent certificates were issued to Mr. Thomas. So Mr. Thomas, it seems, is no stranger to wrongdoing, allegedly. Right? But Mr. Griffith, I don't know if it is he didn't see that, or perhaps he missed that article, because you seem more than proud or willing to admit that you would have issued a firearm dealer's license, giving Mr. Thomas a license to import firearms and to sell. So I'm glad he admitted that. And then he says, with respect to Mr. Thomas, that he was abducted, the police can't abduct him. Again, these guys were not prepared for that interview yesterday, because when the question was asked with respect to when John Gill made the point about the judge stating that Mr. Thomas was abducted, and he took issue with that characterization, and Mr. Griffith told him he has to retract that because he is in contempt and he can't say. The Barbados Attorney General said that it was not an abduction. The Barbados Attorney General in the Parliament of Barbados, recorded on Hansard, indicated that he disagreed with the judge in Trinidad using that term abduction to characterize what took place. So in other words, the Barbados Attorney General, so what, the Barbados Attorney General could be held in contempt of court? When he is giving his opinion based on the information that he has, that there was no abduction, information which quite likely probably was not made available to the judge in him making his assessment. But that's a discussion for another time. Mr. John goes on to say, I wish to state that notwithstanding Commissioner Griffith's philosophy that by issuing firearms to citizens, he was thereby genuinely reducing the opportunity for corruption, this investigation has found the contrary. John said it was his opinion that Griffith's liberal policy had the potential to militarize sections of the society. Such a policy as espoused by him, Griffith, has the potential through inadvertence to militarize sections of the society, which is what Kamala Persad-Bissessar is proposing, should she become Prime Minister, to give everybody gun. Once it is you have a clean record, you have sound mind, and you never get locked up, you could get gun, and we will put stand your ground law in place so that when you get your gun and somebody come in your place, even if you set it up for them to come in your place to cause a bacchanal so you could shoot the person because you have some beef with them and you want an excuse to kill them, or you put yourself deliberately in a situation for confrontation to say that the person came at you and you put two cap in their backside and they're dead. All of that is militarizing the society, right? And it has some people licking their chops. They can nothing else. Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC say, you see that one thing, if she become Prime Minister, I ain't had to wait 10 and 15 years again to get firearm user's license. I just need to apply now, and by next month I have my gun in my waist, and then I could get 2 and 3 in my back pocket, and I shoot them from the hip because it's better showdown at the OK Corral. Just for that, it have people waiting, and she put in things in place too so you could get off. Or as Johnny Abraham said recently at the meeting, if somebody come in your place, I ain't telling all what to say, you know. If somebody come in your place and you kill them, you know. Right? Same thing, stand your ground. But you need to be trained in what to say. You know what, people get killed. And anyway, let me hush my mouth on that. We spoke about that already. That we'll develop a strategy on coaxing and teaching people what to say when it is that you kill somebody, understand your ground law, and you want to get off and say that it was self-defense. We will teach you what to say. He goes on to say, there is no right to bear arms in our society. There is a right to apply for an FUL, and if the applicant fulfills the legal requirements, then the commissioner, in the exercise of his discretion, may grant an FUL. The grant of a firearm is a privilege given to the citizens by exercise of responsible discretion. Responsible discretion. The law thus imposes a critical responsibility upon the Commissioner of Police in the granting of licenses to exercise a measured discretion of his judgment in the assessing of applications for an FUL. The report pointed to a worrying picture of the process used in granting FULs to members of the public, and noted that people who had pending matters for serious offenses and convictions received FULs. Let me repeat that. The report painted a worrying picture of the process used in granting FULs to members of the public, and noted that people who had pending matters for serious offenses and convictions received FULs. Now, I thought, last time I checked, that one of the requirements if you're applying for an FUL is a certificate of character. Now, if you have charges and you're backside before the court, or you're on conviction, you get convicted, you were arrested, you were tried, you were found guilty, right? You have a conviction. Ain't no way you could get a clean certificate of character. But here it is that Mr. John's report is pointing to persons who had pending matters before the court, serious offenses and convictions, get gun, licenses, to go and buy a gun, a legal firearm. On the basis of all the transcripts obtained, the interviews conducted, the documentary evidence made available to me, and the unexplained role of the TTPS secretary's name called, I find that 1, requests for varying sums of money have been made of applicants by police officers attached to the firearms permit section and senior officers in subdivisions to assist in the issuance of firearm users licenses. 2, absence of certificates of character, and in some instances, inaccurate information was recorded on such certificates. But Mr. Griffith is saying these things should not be published. This should not be laid in Parliament. The public don't need to know the extent of the bubble and racket that was taking place in the TTPS Firearms Division under Mr. Griffith's leadership. Because how would that make him look? And this robust system, because remember, he's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He gave out the most firearm users licenses of any police commissioner. Can't bring that into question. I need to beat my chest and say, yes, I see, them lazy backsides and them lazy wretches that had before me 50,000 applications and they only give out 400 or 500. But look, I run in and in 3 years, I give out 4,000 plus. It goes on to say, a failure in at least 2 cases to ensure that the applicants were at least 25 years of age, which is a requirement under Section 17(2)A of the Firearms Act, which prescribes that no license, certificate, or permit shall be granted to a person under the age of 25 years. Persons convicted of criminal charges, others with criminal charges pending, and even named persons involved in questionable activities have been issued provisional licenses. An applicant with the initials DD, who was charged for trafficking in a very significant quantity of cocaine, was issued a provisional permit. There exists a practice of certain firearm dealers having access to the non-public areas of the firearms permit section, and a particular firearm dealer having access to the vault. 20 firearms in 1 year. John's investigations also found that an applicant with the initials AN, who was extradited from Trinidad and Tobago to the United States for drug trafficking offenses, applied for a firearm user's license, and the application was recommended notwithstanding the absence of a certificate of character. There was, however, a note on the file to the effect that the Criminal Records Office was closed at the material time, and that in itself was no reason for making a favorable recommendation. Yeah, well, the criminal, that department closed right now, yeah, so we have no time for that. Let's get him on the thing now. The man not pay the money and decide give him. Another applicant received 20 firearms in 1 year. 16 were issued during Griffith's term and 4 during the short period that former DCP Erwin Hackshaw acted as a commissioner. 20 firearms in 1 year. In one case, an FUL was granted, and in another, the provisions of the Act were not complied with in relation to the grant of a dealership license. I wonder who that was. Applications were being processed and approved in an inordinately short period of time. In comparison with earlier applications, in some instances, the process was completed on the same day that the application was made, while others took months to be processed. So you have people waiting 10, 15 years, and a man could just come in one day. They ain't check to see, the process. They're supposed to come to your house and see where you're going and keep the gun. You have a safe. Where is this safe? You got to talk to your wife, if you have a wife, or your husband. Your husband does beat you? You ever threaten you? Talk to the neighbors. What is this man's dispensation? Because the wife might say, no, everything good. Like the waterfront, but the neighbor say, but she knows she's saying that. But when she get her tail cut every night, you see? All right. Talk to the neighbors, talk to the friends. What is this man's thinking? Is this somebody who should be holding a firearm or 20 firearms? All of this. But in one day, application made in the morning, and by the evening, you stand up in front of you're inside the dealership picking gun. One day. Wow. Griffith brought firearm users license under his charge. Prior to Griffith's tenure, the firearms permit section fell under an assistant commissioner of police administration. However, Griffith changed the structure and brought the section directly under his charge. The report disclosed that during Griffith's 3-year tenure between August 2018 and August 2021, a total of 4,030 provisional permits were granted, as well as 7 firearm dealers' licenses and 6,832 firearm users' licenses. You see, in the interview yesterday, he said he only gave out just 4,000. 4,000. He gave out 4,000 provisional permits, but 6,832 firearm users' licenses. So 6,832 people actually get a license, and you had another 4,030 provisional permits. These are people who had gotten to the last stage, so it was just now for them to get the actual FUL to go and buy the gun. So that is close to 10,000, crossing 10,000 licenses that would have been given out had he remained as commissioner of police and gotten a second term. Based on the statistics provided in the report, of the 6,832 FULs signed off by Griffith during his 3-year period, 4,687 were granted in the final 6 months of his contract between March and August of 2021. 2,937 out of the total 4,030 provisional permits were issued during the 3-year contract. Issued during the 3-year contract were issued in the last 6 months between March and August 2021. Seems he learned that from his days in the PP. My investigation disclosed that during the tenure of Commissioner Griffith, firearm users' licenses issued have shown a remarkable increase, the contents of which have been authenticated by the Forensic Science Center. So Mr. John did a thorough investigation, right? It wasn't just in the police service. John found that some citizens received FUL approvals by Mr. Griffith were less than thorough investigations were carried out, and in some instances, no investigations at all, or by corrupt means employed by errant police officers. Moreover, files were being forwarded for signature and approval, notwithstanding that the applicants had criminal antecedents. Another disturbing trend observed was the issuance of an unfettered number of variations to applicants, and the investigation has shown that some applicants were given permission to own an unwarranted number of firearms. On occasions, these variations, which were provided for in Section 21(2) of the Firearms Act, were issued within days and in some instances the same day of the application for the variation, which gave the appearance of a circumvented or absent investigative process. Now, there's a lot more reading with respect to this issue, right? And I'm saying all of these things took place under Commissioner Griffith, contrary to what he says, that nobody ain't get locked up. And under him, everything was above board. And Rowley hire people and pay them, civilians, and pay them a set of money. Public money is for them to create a report to incriminate him and make a set of allegations and false allegations, and he want Rowley to come out in the public and disclose the report in public so that he could sue. Sue for what, I don't know, because Dr. Rowley is not making any allegations. He simply, if you were to come at a public meeting and say, well, I'm going to read out this thing for the people, this is what was found based on the preliminary. This is the report. The only thing, I ain't no lawyer, but judging from what happened with live sport, the only thing that will come out of that because the Prime Minister would have laid the findings of the report in public domain. Mr. Griffith says he wasn't given an opportunity to respond to the findings, is that the report could be deemed to be null and void, and not that it is. And again, the police is conducting investigations. The police service is conducting investigations, so that report, whether it's laid or it isn't laid, doesn't change the price of coffee, the price of cocoa. The fact of the matter is, the PCA's investigation is still ongoing, as far as I know. And for Mr. Griffith to try and attack or tarnish the investigators hired by or retained by the National Security Council, to me, is disingenuous. Because if memory serves me correctly, one of those officers was one Wellington Virgil, a well-known former policeman who, if memory serves me correctly, would have been involved in several high-profile investigations in this country involving politicians. I think he would have been responsible for investigating some matter involving Mr. Pandey and Andy as well, right? Virgil, Wellington Virgil, well-known. So he knows his stuff. He was supposedly an ace crime fighter and investigator. And this is somebody who would have come through the ranks of the police service. So he spent more years in the police service in various divisions than Mr. Griffith, who spent 3 years as commissioner of police. But you want to question Mr. Virgil's ability and competence to carry out a comprehensive investigation, utilizing his probably over 30 years of police work, his service as a policeman, bringing to bear all of these different things. I don't remember who the other two persons were. But I'm saying, if somebody make an allegation against me and I know I have evidence to prove everything that they say to be a lie, well then bring it, come, as we say, so that I can bring my evidence, refute what you say, and make you look like a fool, and I could show everybody that you're a damn liar, instead of me want to run to the courthouse every Monday morning to prevent you from coming out and saying what it is you have to say. If I have nothing to hide, well then bring what I have to bring. You bring your thing and I bring my thing, and then we match it up and see who making sense. But instead, no. But I must say I was very disturbed with the level of Mr. Griffith's behavior yesterday. And what's unfortunate is some of the people who always have things to say about Dr. Rowley and his demeanor and how he carries about himself and how he's so rough and he always looks something like he's buffing up people. I never hear Dr. Rowley tell nobody how you have on your bosses and all kind of thing, and you're talking nonsense and you're a liar. I heard him on at least 2 occasions yesterday calling John Gill a liar. And you're a liar, you come in the studio, come to this interview and saying things and you have no proof. Come on now, man. Is that any way to conduct yourself? As Mr. Griffith pointed out, that when he had his assessments done by the Police Service Commission, according to him, the only area in which he didn't excel was in his interactions with the media. He got average for that. And probably because every time you're before a camera, you had to be getting on rough and want to call out people. You're making slide innuendos. I ain't going to call no name, but for Gerald Hines, good morning. All this kind of nonsense. So you're always combative with, if it's not the members of the media, is the Prime Minister, is the Minister of National Security. I always say the very thing that got Gary Griffith the job is the very thing that lost him the job with his mouth. I have had personal interactions with the man in the past when I was in the ILP. And I expected him to do a good job because he could talk the talk. He talking all this broken windows theory and all of this kind of thing, and he bring Bill Bratton here and Giuliani and all of these different things. He studied, or at least that's the impression I got, having conferred with these men, that he would have done an in-depth study of what they did to bring the rate of crime down, in particular gun crimes down in the city of New York, which has a population of over 8 million people and has less than 400 murders per year. And that is an accomplishment. And there were many people who were taken. In fact, I think John Benoit made the point yesterday that he was rooting for Gary. He was rooting for him. But, and I know there are some people who are listening now who probably are fans of Gary, and that's no problem. As I say, I hold no brief for the man, but I just think he needs to take it down a bit. You need to take it down. You can't be calling Kid Rowley a bully, and a raging bull, and all of these different things, and you behaving 10 times worse. And the last thing I want to touch on before I take my calls, because I'm looking at the time, this issue of email gate that he bring up again, and using that to accuse Dr. Rowley of being a liar, and that everybody should have known that the emails were fake because of the typographical errors in some of the email addresses where Anna Ram Logan's name was spelled A-N-A-N instead of A-N-A-N-D. But that was the only error in that email address. So, and in some cases it was .com instead of .com. And that is the only thing that you could point to say that the emails were fake, because the email addresses had typographical errors, and that alone tells you that the emails were fake. Never mind the fact that the US Circuit Court judge who granted the warrant for the TTPS to be able to get the information about the accounts of the persons named from Google and Microsoft was convinced, based on what he read, the email transcripts, and other supporting evidence provided to this judge, showing that some of the things that were in these emails actually happened, and happened after the emails were supposedly written, indicating that, look, we have reason to believe because of this that this may be genuine. And the judge, who the report stated is not one of them judges that you could pull wool over his eye. He's one of those difficult judges that you have to come real good to convince to give you a warrant. And he was satisfied, based on the representations made by the representatives of Trinidad and Tobago, the TTPS and their legal counsel, that we have good reason to want to get a warrant to search the server for these people's accounts and the emails that they may or may not have sent in the period as indicated in the email transcripts. But Mr. Griffith is focusing on that. He is not focusing on what the report said, that some of the things stated in the emails actually happened. No, that could give some level of credence that this might be a real thing. You know what he said? The emails were fake because they spelled Anna's name wrong, and they had .con instead of .com, and there were 23 typographical errors. So based on typographical errors, the emails were fake. DPP's final report says we can neither confirm nor deny the authenticity of the emails. However, the balance of probability is on the side of the emails having the transcripts actually being emails that were sent, more so than on the side of them not being genuine, or at least some of them. And it was always said that it was not a printout of emails, but that someone may have typed out transcripts of actual emails that may have been sent so as to not get, so there's, rather than send an electronic version, that they provided typed up printed versions so that their server, or that no one would be able to track them. In fact, not so long ago, I heard Philip Edward Alexander, who is the political leader of the PEP, saying that what the emails actually wasn't email transcripts, but in fact, information that had been intercepted by the SIA or the SSA, one of the two, and that this is information that they would have gotten having tapped people's phones and gone into certain people's emails and accounts and so on. And that the transcripts, that what was heard and the information that was gathered was typed up in a form to look like emails to conceal where they actually came from. That's what I heard him saying. I don't know where he got that information from, but that's what he said. That the email supposed transcripts were actually recorded conversations that the SSA or the SIA had gotten. Right? But this man, who is the commissioner of police, or was the commissioner of police, and charged with the responsibility to be impartial, not because you were a former politician at the time that this thing happened. Yes, granted, your name was called up in it, but you should have recused yourself. But we know the PP don't know nothing about recusals. But even so, in the conduct of the investigation, the same way you went and conduct the investigation into the claim that Munilal made that Dr. Rowley get 500,000 US and 500,000 US was sent to some account in Miami and some nonsense like that, and he went all the way to Miami to get information, And as Gary Griffith said, when his officers went to the US and consulted with Interpol to get information, that the officers laughed at them. They laughed at the TTPS officers and said, "Are you for real?" So a man stand up in Parliament and he make this claim, and all wasting we time to come, or jump on a plane to come all the way here to investigate that. All serious and laugh at them. Gary Griffith, is on record as saying that. But Google said, based on the period of time that expired between when the emails are alleged to have been sent and when a request for a preservation order was made, it is possible that in that 9-month period, that the emails or these purported emails could have been deleted from the accounts of the account holders. That's what Google said. Google never said that the emails were fake. Google never said the emails weren't sent. They said, we cannot confirm because you all take too long to come to us with a preservation order to ask us to provide you to go through this. We just don't have the information on our server anymore. So we can't tell you if it was there or if it wasn't. This is what Google said. It's in the Deputy DPP's report. It is all there. But apparently he didn't see the copy of that report. He didn't read that, or he's suffering from short-term memory. So he didn't see that part of the report. But Rowley is a liar, and Rowley make up emails and come in the Parliament. You sat down there. You were there when Vanilla Allen Toppin did her nastiness, right? You didn't speak out on it. But now, today, yesterday, you want to come and say, yeah, well, that was wrong, and that was uncalled for, and that was nasty. You should have made that point then to your colleagues, but you didn't say one word. Nothing. Collective responsibility, right? So you prepare to have your name tarnished as being part of the group that supported Vanilla Allen Toppin in that nastiness that she did to tarnish Dr. Rowley's name. But today, how much years later now, you can say, oh, yeah, well, that wasn't right. That was in poor taste. It wasn't in poor taste then. It's in poor taste now because trying to get into office. And we realize we need PNM votes to do so. And 7701763. Oh boy. Right, great. Nice. 7701763. There was something else I was supposed to discuss, but I will leave that for Tuesday. What is going on in Tobago with the retirement of some permanent secretary and some chief administrator, and 1 month later, a replace. Now, I am not too familiar with how the public service works, but I know, based on how it works in at least, that you know well in advance when people are going on pre-retirement leave, and you have persons who can act in the position until a substantive appointment is made. So I don't know what is going on in Tobago, but we have to discuss that. So let me go this way. Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
Dominic.
Yes, sir.
What's up?
I am good, sir.
I know Eric Mauritania don't play that play by Anil for me, you know.
Leave it there. Which one exactly you're talking about? Tell me.
The last tape you play by Anil Robert.
All right, no problem.
The last one you play in the program.
No problem. I could find it.
All right. And that interview with Gary Griffith yesterday. He tried to build them like Marketab.
I will agree with you on that.
They didn't organize themselves properly.
No, they weren't prepared.
But I called for that. Dominic, some hearing PNM supporters is not too pleased with PNM, the UNC people jumping across the PNM like Bravo.
I didn't hear that, but all right.
Hence the reason why
Hence the reason what? Stay one place. You're breaking up. Hello? Call me back, leave it there. You break it up. Jenny? Hello? Hello? Jenny, go ahead and speak.
Hi, good afternoon, Dominic. Good afternoon, listeners.
Hey, Jen.
I would have listened to that interview yesterday morning on the barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
And only one conclusion I could come to, this is logically speaking, my opinion, it had to be that Gary Griffith would have paid for that segment. So that he could carry the show and say what he wants, how he wants, and the host may not have had as much control as they would normally have. That is the only suggestion, because Mr. Benoit and Mr. Gale are too experienced and knowledge of a host, and they would not just sit there and allow somebody to disrespect them and persons who call it. So I am just thinking probably he paid for that, so he run the show. Yeah. He would have said something there, Gary, for that the government cannot hire investigators to investigate anything. And it kind of threw me, because with the Piaco project, it was a politician, a certain government minister, in fact, the AG of the UNC government, who would have initiated a civilian who was a forensic scientist, forensic auditor, who came into Trinidad to investigate the goings on at the Piaco project. So that was a government who would have instituted that, because that was the AG. And coming out of that, we are seeing that we're going back money, because it was a military cow. It was the biggest and massive corruption ever happened in this country. So when Gary Griffith said that a government official can't initiate investigation, I don't understand that. However, let me move on. That situation with Tobago, I understand there's nobody to print the checks.
Yes.
There's a senior officer who is supposed to print the check. It is said, if I'm not mistaken, that she voluntarily resigned. So if she voluntarily resigned, it means she leave before was time to leave.
Yes.
And actually, before time was to leave, and Fali is the finance secretary, why would she leave? Is it that there were disputes between herself or himself and Fali? I don't know. Because it is honestly strange that Fali and them come out and talk about this before, and she hasn't been there, or he hasn't been there for the past 3 weeks or whatever, to print checks. So is it that they're afraid of coming out to talk, that they don't have anybody in event that the person come out and say why they leave? Because if they don't have somebody, all they have to do, send to central government, and then through service commission, somebody will be replaced, because those are documents will be in that the person is leaving. So why hasn't that been done? It's really interesting what is happening. And lastly, I want to ask Mr. Gary Griffith, is it true that Watson Solomon Duke has a licensed firearm? That is 1. 2. If he has a licensed firearm, how was he able to get that when he's before the court on criminal charges? And 3, is it a laser gun, the one that you like the shine and the red light, you get a spot? Does he have one of that? And Duke would have lost his appeal with the putting of the fire alarm. So he is a convicted criminal. Yes. He will not be able to renew his visa to go to America anywhere, because in America, that charge that he was convicted on is a terroristic act in America, and it carries a 10-year sentence. So he is a convicted criminal. He lost his appeal in the appeals court. I wait to see if he will carry it to the Privy Council. So he needs to add that to his list of accomplishments, because he cannot go to the police station and get a good character record, police record. He can't get it because he is a criminal. He is convicted. Thank you, that make me safe.
Thanks, Jen. I think next time John and John need to indicate to the listeners they would be well in advance and ask the people for some questions. Let me see. Hello, good afternoon. Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Romain. Good afternoon to the listeners and the genuine followers of the Debunking UNC Live Facts page. Now, I would have listened to that interview as well yesterday, and Dominic and callers, of all my years living in Trinidad and Tobago, that interview was the worst, man. It was so disparaging that it caused people to really get real upset, because, all right, as what Jenny said just now, that I am of the opinion as well, Gary would have paid for that segment, because I found to know, for heaven's name, that John Gill and John Benoit let me get the right title, Mr. Gill and Mr. Benoit, would have sat there and have this tyrant insult them on the national radio, and Oli didn't say nothing. Now, if I was the host of that program and he come in that station and with that kind of data, whether you pay for it or not, I would have let him know. I said, Mr. Griffith, with all due respect, I will ask you to apologize to the announcer, the station, as well as the callers. And if you don't want to adhere to, I will ask you to leave. Right? Because that individual is very disrespectful. And I've got to understand that when he was commissioner, he used to talk down police, senior officers. When they had a meeting, that same commissioner called Gary Griffith talk down them. The Gary have no respect for people, no whatsoever. And you're gonna put yourself up to be what? Prime Minister for what country? Trinidad and Tobago? We don't want you there. We don't want you there. Until you can answer us in this country. What is the fiasco with just your advisor with Christian Chandler with the board bacchanal up to this day, Dominic? Not a word come out of that investigation with Christian Chandler and the bacchanal on the board on the high seas. Yeah. Not a word out of that. You understand? This fella who they pay X amount of money for to be social media police, $20,000 to be social media police to mark people when people taking you on to come and post and what they insult them on Facebook. All these sort of stupidness that Gary did in that 3 years. When you come to talk us that BS and say, oh, that the public had trust you 14%, and then when you one day was 55%, how can that foolishness? No, Gary, you need to back down. Back down 50. Back down, because you talking about Dr. Rowley being arrogant and unreasonable. But what's your behavior yesterday? You was aspiring to be a prime minister of a country, and that's how you operated. So how would the electorate see you or vote for you in that kind of manner behavior? No. Right? And that FUA bacchanal, he have a lot to answer for that. That is why he don't want Dr. Rowley to leave the parliament. That is my take on it, Dominic. A locked on good program. Continue what you're doing.
Thank you. Hello, good day.
Dominic.
Yes. Yes, sir.
As I was telling you, I heard PNM supporters is circumspect with UNC people jumping across in the PNM. Hence the reason why I asked the question back in the days. From 2010 to 2015, how much people from the PNM, the UNC took and give them big position in their government. People call making excuse all those Trinidadians. But you know what? Or you take that now. Dominic, I will leave it there.
Thank you, sir. Boy, 7701763. Yes. Maybe there's something else. But anyway. Well, yeah, I'm seeing UNC people jumping ship and coming across to the PNM. How many have been selected as let's call them candidates? I haven't seen any. Well, I think there's just one, but that's the guy from Arima, Fish, and he was previously PNM. He represented the UNC, and now he's back in the PNM camp. So, but people have to be upset if they so choose. Let's see here. Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Rubin?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rubin?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know the old people have a saying, show me your friends and tell you who you are?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Griffith once said that Rudolph Giuliani is a personal friend.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Mr. Giuliani has been disbarred in the States of America?
I heard so, yes.
Yes, he has been disbarred.
Yes.
he can no longer practice as an attorney because of all his dealings with Mr. Trump.
Right.
And as you mentioned that, there are the Republicans now throwing their hat in the ring to go up as the Republican candidate for the upcoming election, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's one named Chris Christie. You heard that name before?
Former Governor Chris Christie, yes.
Right. He recently said, describing Donald Trump, he recently said, this man is a man when he does something wrong, he always finds a way to blame somebody else. Right? And when something is done right, he always finds a way to claim that he's the one responsible for it. That epitomizes and perfectly describes Mr. Griffith. I say nothing more. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Seven 1763. United National Congress. So Trump get indicted. But want to blame the Democrats. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon to you, Dominic.
Hi, good afternoon.
Am I coming to play?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Great too.
Thank you.
Dominic, I am taking a different point of view with our interview yesterday with Mr. Gill and Mr. Benmar. I think they were leaving him to show who he is. They are allowing him to be brownish, to be rude, to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Right? So that the public to see who Gary Griffith is. And I think they did a great job.
I will agree with that.
Off. You understand?
Yes.
Dominic, even if I had any hopes of giving him any kind of a little, I was really turned up, and I have never seen him so disrespectful as yesterday. So they did a great job as far as I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a great weekend.
You too. From that perspective, I will agree with you. Yeah, because he really showed his colors yesterday. Hello, good afternoon.
Dominic, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good. Dominic, I think Gary Griffith was playing smart with foolishness. And he always saying that Dr. Rowley called an investigation into him.
Yes.
That's the furthest thing from the truth. Dr. Rowley didn't call an investigation into him. Dr. Rowley would have gotten information, and as the head of the National Security Council, which the police commissioner falls under, together with customs, the head of the army, and all those things, they form the National Security Council.
Yep.
The Prime Minister sits as the chairman. So if he has that information, he will go through the necessary channels that go to pass the information onto the police. You go to the police thing who hires the police commissioner, right? Yes, and he could recommend that they call they do like an audit.
Right.
So what they was doing, because the problem was with the gun license, so they was doing a gun license audit. And since that Gary Griffith, when he came in, he made changes. Gary Griffith told us that he made changes. He made significant changes. So you can't put Gary Griffith there to obstruct when they're doing the audit, and the Prime Minister can't get involved in the audit. So here's the reason why they had that committee that they had the police association, but these people them got those people in them, and they hired them to do an audit. And here we're going with the audit. The audit is not like an investigation that what Gary Griffith is fooling us with, that the Prime Minister investigating him. Because in that investigation or the audited, people wasn't forced to come before them. They didn't feel that you don't want to go, you do go.
Yes.
So how come that could be an investigation that why he's putting it on like the Prime Minister investigating? Because with the audit, what it showed up, it gave the head of the National Security Council information and serious information, because that is what the National Security Council is all about. Because had we had that in 1990, we might have been able to to quell the insurrection in 1990.
Right.
So that is what the thing. So these people will sit down and they have a lot of things these people them know what's going on, but as the Prime Minister say, he just can't talk about this. He can't say certain things.
Yes.
You just have to let certain things and let the police and then continue to gather information gather to be evidence, and then they will charge it however they knew about these things. About the different, and when you're looking to fly out and bust out the disconnection flight, you have to go and get in quick.
That's the thing.
Because had he leave Barbados, you might not be able to get here again. And he play a major role in the same gun life audit.
Yes.
So then we have to ask ourselves, why does Gary Griffith is blocking that? Especially that he was the police commissioner of police. One would have think a law enforcement officer and fighting crime, you would have subject yourself to that. If you know you're innocent, why are you blocking it? You know what he did to himself? What he did to the officers and them down in South. Come down and say, listen, now I need all to take a polygraph test. Who didn't take a polygraph test? He shipped them out. So basically, the National Security Council had to do that because he's a man cannot be trusted. And since the TCA and them has that information, you think they will put him back? You understand what I'm saying? But you see, he's been smart. So he's trying to keep beating the science, the Prime Minister thing, and the Prime Minister fire here, and the Prime Minister thing, so the Prime Minister. He know what he do. And we know it because you just, from the report, you just say something that Gary needs to answer this and clear these up.
Yes.
Why is it happening and why is that happening? But he blocked the investigation, he blocked the report from being laid. Since we know at least once it's laid in Parliament, the opposition could ask questions, the government could put questions on things, and then know that report could go to the police, and then the police will do an investigation. But he stopped it. But the Prime Minister has to be very careful of what he says on that. So when he's showing all that, they're already suing him. But you see, if Rowley sue him, if Dr. Rowley sue him, and it goes to court, it goes to the whole thing. Right now, they just have to wait and hold on with that information and get further other evidence to build up proper cases. And that is what you don't want. So the best thing to do at the time, see if I can get in a position of power in Trinidad and Tobago. That we looking for. Because I notice in this country, it's very hard. Once you like what Kamala do, put you in a seat to represent people, and the police, it's hard for the police to come and ask you questions or come and dig up your place.
Yeah.
You can't do that with somebody for that kind of thing. So basically, because of what Gary has been doing, and what he's been saying, and things that don't make sense and other people, and I put my 2 pieces thing in with the report. No, the report is just a report. That report needs to be investigated, but there are some things in the report is facts. Facts one is that Gary made significant changes into that fact too. You see that SRP and entering room and taking files and coming back with the files with you're not supposed to do it. Remove the FDOs, division officers who would usually do certain things and put it direct under him. So he gives the instruction. Then you're putting yourself up to we want to be answering the questions. And when we ask you the questions, you're going to the court to block us from finding out what you did. Something is wrong with that man. I'm so happy that he's no longer there. And if people don't put 2 and 2 together and realize it, you put me in our office again. Gary Griffith has always been failing us in offices. From the first time when he was in the Prime Minister office as an officer in the army, here the Bacchanal, he was being calling in and saying the National Security Council and John them asking him about the OPVs, he's twisting these and talking a certain nonsense about the price. Just OPVs, what he saying here, but then you're telling him that the same Patrick Manning was so good. Patrols was so good and so thingy, and them person them back practice. You get it up power, So you see, it's not trust these guys and them. He said he was the one who tell Kamala and them that those vessels wasn't good, and Kamala come out and tell us that because he was the advisor.
Yes.
that the crime is on land and not on sea, and he was saying that we don't need that smaller vessels to run around Trinidad and all kind of nonsense. You know, when Dr. Rowley get the brand new spanking OPGs, a cheap and scaled down one, that one Patrick Manning had, you know, he complimented though.
Mm-hmm.
So see, don't believe everything them calling and say good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's see what's the time there. Right. What's the time already? We can go for another 10 minutes. So I think probably take another couple calls. 7701763. See who we have here. Sedena Koshi saying, imagine Gary saying Dr. Rowley wanted him, wanted two people using some disparaging word made him change his mind. What an exceptional human being. See what else we have here. Aries says he has a lot to answer for in every institution he was a part of. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Very interested.
Thank you.
So, what I am facing, you see, Trinidadians and how they think. Petitions feed on that. They are very gullible. And case in point, what happened down in Invaders Media on Friday.
Yes.
People take time to analyze things. They hear something and they run with it. You take time to ask pertinent questions. You know, what, why, how, when. And the politicians feed on that. They feed on that. And they use that to their advantage. But if people was to be more critical thinker, you don't have no degree to be a critical thinker.
Yes.
They would be more think through things. A lot of the things we're going through now wouldn't happen. And I wish more people would really take time and listen to the facts.
Yes.
You see the thing with Gary, he sees things with such confidence. And because people are gullible, they take it. Because he sees it with that, confidence, they take it as true. And not question if they think it true. So it's a very interesting program, and it enlightened me a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me give somebody else a chance.
Yes, thank you so much. Right, you see here, Angie says he didn't get enough playtime when he was small, so he's still game time, crown clown. Oh Lord. All right, let me see who's here. Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, man. Dominic,
I am good, man.
good program. You have the good work.
Thank you.
And we spread the message via your Instagram. I think we're seeing all these so-called truth giving stress, but don't let them stress you out. I agree with the last caller there. I think Trinidadians has been very gullible. And what happened, I think we just run on emotions.
Yes.
With respect to the two guests yesterday, I think they need to really be prepared there. I would have preferred somebody like Dominic Calipasad or Aisha Wells to be with those two guys yesterday. But they wanted to do what is evident that we actually saw Mr. Gary Griffith personality, no surprise, nothing new. As far as I'm concerned, he's a narcissist.
Right.
And they hear talks on the ground saying that he and the party is basically the new / PEP COP. And he shares his mission with his party to split the votes in Diego Martin because he ain't talk with the
Yep.
I don't know who tweeted it, that the UNC might give him the Diego Martin Regional Corporation and perhaps Samoa Regional Corporation. I don't know who it's that. But we wait and see if it is true. Well, basically his party is the new COP. But basically his party working on the ground right now and the targeting places like Westmoreland and Allison and all them places.
Right.
So they know who they targeting. They know who they targeting. Because the COP had their own certain group of people who were supporting them, and you know who they were. So that kind of wait and see.
Right.
You have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Never at the moment in tweet PNT. The UNC knows they have no chance really in Diego Martin. So yesterday that the government would have opened yet another facility constructed under them, started under this administration, completed under this administration, as a part of the development of that whole area in Diego Martin. There, the new administrative complex for the Diego Martin, no longer regional corporation, but the borough corporation of Diego Martin, right? So there's the Diego Martin interchange that is well under construction there. You have a new First Citizens Bank open just a little way down the road. And now there's Diego Martin Administration Complex. So there's a lot of development taking place down in that area. In addition to, you have the Diego Martin Sporting Complex, the Diego Martin Health Center. Recently, just a couple of weeks ago, I think they opened a new community center down in that area. So when supporters of the UNC tell you that this government ain't do nothing for the last 8 years and they spent 500 billion and you want to see what the 500 billion spent on, point them in that direction. Tell them take a drive down to Diego Martin, even though some of them from Ohio can't even find Diego Martin if they use Waze or Google Maps. Still tell them, check the Prime Minister's Facebook page and they will see all of these things that are taking place. Right? One of them the other day, I had to put them in his place saying in the comments, name one thing the PNM do since this Prime Minister come into office. When he's talking a pack of nonsense. Well, he wasn't ready for the list that he get. No response. And I'm not surprised. When you give them the list, all of a sudden they crawl back in whatever hole they came out from. Never to resurface again, or if they do resurface, it's probably weeks later. But folks, we are in a local government election campaign. Mr. Chance has told you all it is really a general election campaign and it should be treated as such. The UNC supporters, I can tell you, are energized to vote. In fact, they've been energized to vote from the day they lost the election back on September 7th, 2015. And they're even more so energized now. By the comments that they read on Facebook and social media, they figure, yeah, they have it in the bag. Well, all right, time will tell on August 14th if that is in fact so. But the key to the PNM being successful in this election is just voter turnout. The PNM has support, solid support. It's how do you get these people to leave their homes, to use the 2 hours that they get on that day from work to go and vote instead of doing other things, right? And they need to understand how serious it is. I keep making the point. If the UNC gets any headway, any leads in this local government election, we're not going to hear the end of it for the next 2 years, leading up to the general election. The same way that we can't hear the end of Tobago's THA elections. That was a year and a half ago. And despite the fact that there has been no real improvements taking place in Tobago, look at what the THAs in checks can't be printed because senior officials, not because it's craziness. And ask them what has happened positively in the last year and a half that says, yes, we made the right decision. What? Up to now, Fali has not been able to make a statement with respect to that audio clip. Everybody knows it's him. Everybody knows it was Zarisha Hackett. Some event they had where it was on Faith B. Israel represented him, and her excuse for him not being there is that he's dealing with this issue of the retired permanent secretary or chief administrator, as the case may be, and he's been trying to deal with that for the last month. So that's the excuse he come in with, to say that he was trying to deal with that for the last month and the reason he wasn't able to make a statement. So I don't know if they're hoping that other things will happen and people will just forget about that and sweep it under the rug. That you hear it is we are hearing in an audio tape the advocacy for the use of public monies for propaganda, right? And Tobago must say, are you all in better hands under? When we told you all, we tell all you what to expect from Fali and them. Well, they didn't listen. And now look what is taking place there. 7 million lost for Carnival. How much million they lost for? 7 million lost for the Jazz Festival and 700,000 for Carnival and so on. Despite the fact that we were told 13 million, we didn't spend the 13 million for Carnival. We spent less and we came in under budget, and it would have brought in some $300 million in visitor spend, or 300 million US in visitor spend and all that kind of thing. Really? Where? We're going to talk that on Tuesday. So thank you so much for listening today. Sunday again. Apologies for the late start, but it couldn't be helped. So with that having been said, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of your weekend. Have a productive week, and we will chat on Tuesday. Marina Jennings says, We here in the West not giving any other party other than the PNM our votes. PNM always reigned and will always reign down here. Wayne Gibson says coalition party cannot win any seats in Trinidad. The government is spending our money where we can see it. So true. Anon says Farley is waiting for Trinis to forget. Ian Bristol says we inside. Have that voting finger under lock and key for the 14th. Very good. Wayne Gibson also says very smart. We know your votes give serious consequences. Yes, so Don Clark says, good afternoon all and hope to see you on Tuesday. Yes, we have to start the discussion on Tuesdays as well. Let me just touch on a couple more here. Andrea says, I like how John Benoit, I missed that one, let me see. I like how John Benoit moved. God forbid if he had taken him on. Says here, right. Andrea says, great is the PNM, and that is that. Ain't voting nobody else but the PNM. Very good. So just make sure that your friends, family, neighbors, everybody, we're on the same page. We don't want to get, like I'm seeing some development here in the Chaguanas Borough Corporation, some bacchanal, again, corruption, bacchanal again there too with some land developer and so on. Corruption is in their DNA. Corruption is in their DNA, whether they're in office, out of office, what have you, thief. That's all they need to do. Thief, corruption. If you haven't gotten your copy of today's Express, read part 3 of the Piaco Airport inquiry. The mistress of the mask probably going to come every Monday. She's talking about it, and we're going to hear it again tomorrow night. So I see the Express continues this series, but what it shows is that DPL John was exonerated. And 3 weeks now we're hearing that. DPL John exonerated. That's the only thing she could talk about with respect to the Piaco Airport. That she told you and me was a 25-year-old PNM smear campaign designed to make the UNC look corrupt. And now that the evidence is coming out, can't deny it. What they're talking about is DPL John and DPL John. Folks, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And God's willing, we will chat again on Tuesday morning. All right? I'm